Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Sid Mickle Publications. Thank you for taking the time to join us here today. As we get started here today, we're in Module 4 of 7 on how to write your book. And as we've said in the past, it may be more focused on the first book, but I think a lot of the principles and theories and thoughts and practices we're going to have here are going to apply to whatever book you're writing, whether it's your first, your 10th, whatever. In the past few weeks, we have talked about specific things. In Module 1, we really talked about getting yourself prepared, doing some of that background work, social media, things of that nature, planning, outlining, getting your mindset on how to write the book. In Module 2, we talked about things like back matter, table of contents. How did you want to really start that book? How did you want it to look? So we have those things going. In Module 3, we really got focused on some of the more important parts of writing the book, and that is our first few paragraphs, which, as we've said before, you want to make that reader really enjoy that first few pages and want to keep that book in their hand. You're going to want them to read those 10 pages and the next 10 pages and the first chapter and go from there. So it is incredibly important for you to write very well and lay out some action and lay out things that are going to commit that reader to finding out more about your story. Whether it's your main character, as I talked about last week, some of the sub-characters open in book number 7, Kill 'Em All. I had the death of a sub-character really launch the first few pages of the book and kind of paint the picture of why the main character was in such trouble. So today we're in Module 4. You had some homework working on that first few paragraphs. So if you've done that and you feel good about it, now's the time for us to press on into some of the relatively difficult parts of writing your book. And when I say relatively difficult, what I mean is no one can write your book for you. I hope you don't want anybody to write your book for you. I hope you want to write your book. I hope your story is what you want to put on paper, and you want to tell that story, and you want to say the things that are important to you, and complete this work. Write your full manuscript, and get that book ready to publish. So now we're into. Maybe we've finished our first chapter. Maybe we got ourselves off to that really good start. You have your outline in mind. You have your characters in mind. And if you don't, you have to get that ready. You have to start writing with the intent on filling out the pages, filling out the story, making sure that everything comes together. Remember, we talked about technically, you want to polish that book and you want that entire work to have, barricades. You want it to have boundaries. You want it to fit in a certain stream of thought that your readers are going to really enjoy. And they are, again, going to be hungry to read more about your book and really enjoy it and not want to put it down. And they'll buy your book. And that's the whole point of the business side of this conversation. The creative side is, do you love your book? And that's going to come in the next few weeks. Maybe it's a month. Maybe it's a year. And I'll tell you this, book number 1 over there, the cover that says A Backwards Glance, it probably took me 10 years to write that. Now I was gathering the story and walking through it in my mind and really putting things together. But it took about 18 months to sit down and start writing it and finish that book. And of course, like a lot of new writers, I had a little overwriting done. So in that book, which is about 440 pages, I believe, I cut out 5 chapters. They just weren't necessary to the book. And it impacted the books, not only the book's cost, but I think the book's readability. The second book was Who Killed Glenna? And Who Killed Glenna was the beginning of my 3-book Sam Bennett series, but it was my book number 2. And I enjoyed writing that very much. It was a stretch for me to come up with the story and make it work, make it get to a point where it worked well enough for the next part of that story. Book 2, I just launched a few weeks ago, is Kill 'Em All, and it is the second installment of the Sam Bennett series. I'm working currently on installment number 3. That book is called Kill Haraway. And that book It's slow. I'm not going to rush that one. It will finish off that 3-book set. Let's jump back. If I could turn back time. If I could turn back time was one of those books that I just wanted to write a story, just a fictional story. It was a collection of thoughts and a plot line that I wanted to write. And I did, and I enjoyed it. And the book's been fairly successful. It's probably the third most successful of the books. I don't count book 4 because it's just too new. But it was fun to write. I enjoyed it. And what it did, it taught me some things. It taught me how to not just give in and publish a book when it wasn't ready. That's a tendency I think we all as new authors have, is like, we want to finish this. Well, let's go. Let's get this done. Let's move on. It's really good. Well, it's probably not really good. So that leads us to the most important part of our conversation today. Let's again assume you finished chapter 1. It's time to write chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter whatever. The hard part of this module is explaining to everyone listening, now you have to go to work. Nothing I tell you is going to really help you write your story. We are at the midway of this 7-part series, and it is the most crucial part of it. Now your discipline and your dedication will be put to the test, as well as your plot and your characters and your writing habits. It's just that simple. It's not a great mystery. You're going to go through days when you do want to write and days when you don't want to write. You're going to struggle at times, and you're going to be really free-flowing. As you've heard me mention, I free write. I sit down and write until I just can't or don't want to write anymore, and I think the writing is suffering. If you're like me, that's a real natural way to write. I don't like to force, again, I said last week, I don't like to have targets, specific goals of numbers, like number of pages or number of words. I write until I really don't think I'm writing good stuff, and I stop. So now you have that assignment. You're going to sit down over the course of however long it takes you, and you're going to write your book, and you're going to get to the ending of your book. And that entire body of words and sentences and paragraphs are going to make or break your book. But let's think about what we're going to do as we go along. One of the things I truly did habitually was when I came back to writing in all these books, when I would stop and I would come back, I would read basically until I got to the middle of the book and it was just too much time. I would read to the point I had stopped and start writing. It helped me get focused on what I was writing. It helped me center my thoughts on where the plot was or where the story was. And it wasn't just, dropping in from, outer space in the middle of the story. It made the editing and the blending a little bit harder when I did that later on in the book. But I would suggest that you get in the habit of doing your rewrites, your editing, and that's self-editing. That's not final editing every step of the way. You're going to save yourself time. You're going to save your professional editor time, and it's going to make that person's job easier to polish and send you a book back that's ready for a final edit. And when I say final edit, they're going to make their suggestions, their edits, and they're going to send it to you for approval or fixes or whatever, or ignoring. A lot of the things my editor sends back to me, I ignore them. I like the things that are there, or I just tweak them. Some of the things I absolutely change exactly the way the editor recommends. To me, that's editing. That's probably really why you pay for an editor. You get that benefit and you use it, you manipulate it, you make it fit in your book. Okay, now you're going through this writing. Keep your followers on your Facebook page, Instagram page, X, on TikTok, Twitter, whatever you do. Keep them abreast of where you are in your writing. Post pictures of your desk, of your laptop. Send out excerpts of your work and ask people to comment on it. Remember, we talked about joining some writing forums. There's a double-edged sword there, and we've talked about it. There's some really snarky comments from writing groups. There's a lot of experts out there that when you ask a question because you just don't know, you get treated badly, but not by everybody. Some people will really see what you're talking about and your struggle might be, and they'll answer it for you. Just thicken your skin and get ready to move forward when you get the things that aren't really pleasant. Don't take offense at it. Just keep writing. Everybody started at one point in time, and Those of us who in this video, let me tell you, I remember starting, and those of you who are just getting going with your writing, you'll remember this time really well. The important thing is to learn. Learn so many things from this so that you don't have to go through this process of figuring them out and rethinking it. Now, you're going to adjust it. You're going to write better. You're going to write better chapters and paragraphs and sentences. You're going to stop using certain words. You're going to eliminate repetitive phrases. And you're really going to edit that book yourself with rewrites until you clean all that junk up. At least that's your homework assignment. That's what you're supposed to do. Okay, we were in module 4, right? So we're sitting there and we're saying, we're nearing the end of this story. Let's say it's 12 chapters. You're in chapter 11. You've been posting, you've been rewriting, you've been editing. Now you sit down and you're at, again, one of the most important chapters. Remember, chapter 1's important. You want to get people involved. Chapter last is very important because you want to close that book out properly. You want to close the characters, all the characters that are important, your main characters, your minor characters, but you want to secure and close and define the plot or the reason the book exists. You want to explain it. You want to tell that story. So you've got that bookend of very important chapters, and they just call out for a little extra attention. The middle of your book, it has the same desire and demand for quality. Okay, you finish chapter 11, now you finish chapter 12. You consider your book to be finished. No, you don't upload it to KDP. No, you don't do that. You go back and you hit read aloud if you've got that software or that app in your computer, and you listen to the book. You send it out to readers. Some people call them beta readers. Some people just call them test readers, whatever you want to do. And you solicit feedback. And you can do that not just at the end. You can do that during the entire process. And I suggest you do, all along. People are willing to help you if you ask them, and if you really give them the sense that they're helping you and they're making this book better, they're probably going to contribute. They're probably going to help you with things that you really need help with. Okay, your test readers are giving you information, and you're editing, you're rewriting. Remember this, you're going to rewrite it as soon as you finish it. As soon as you rewrite it, you're going to read the entire thing. You know what you're going to do then? You're going to rewrite it. You may not rewrite the entire book because you've got to get to a point with parts of your book that you love, that you absolutely will say, I'm not changing this. This is right. The only person who matters in the writing of this book is you, because you're the author. When you say this book is, or this section of the book is spot on, it's right, it doesn't need anything else. Okay. If you're convinced, move to something else, because every time you go back and you start editing that book, you will find something that you think needs to be tweaked, or maybe a sentence change. Step away from it for a few days. Come back and read with the mindset of rewriting. This sounds really boring, doesn't it? It sounds really tedious. It's just how you write a really good book. I am an impatient person, and I always have been. And I want to finish the book. I want it to go live, man. I want to see things happen. No, that's not the way you do this. You sit down and you just work on this book until you can't work on it anymore. And you solicit help from people to read it and tell you things. And I know it sounds very mundane. It sounds very simple, probably. But it's not simple at all. Again, your discipline, your dedication, and your total commitment to writing this book well, that's what you'll get in the end of it. I've said this to you before. I've written 7 books. None of them are like this last book, Kill 'Em All. I worked on this book longer and more intently, not time-wise. I worked on it actually hard work, focused time more than any other book. And I really spent the time, and when I got to the end of it, I felt like every chapter was right. I felt like every chapter was ready to go. And when I did that, I sent it to my editor, and she chewed it apart. Not nearly as bad as other books, but she sent me a lot of red marks. And I went through that process of editing and fine-tuning put it away for a couple days, and then read it. And you know what? After her edits and my multiple edits, self-edits, I really liked the book. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a good book. I thought every segment of the book was right. I did not rush it. I did not force it. I did not try to get away with anything. I worked on that book until I, in my own mind, said it's ready to be published. Then I went to KDP and published it, and it came back and said, your book is live. Now, in the interim of hitting that button, remember, I've already sent it out to a professional editor. I hired, on Fiverr, a book cover producer, and I had my book cover ready. That was another process of going through multiple iterations of the book cover. And this person I worked with was very good. I changed and tweaked and discussed a dozen things. Now, she didn't redo it a dozen times, but we probably went through a change in that book cover 5 times, and we got it to where we were both very comfortable. And when I say we were both, she was probably ready to be finished. I was comfortable, and I was happy with it. So all those things came together really quickly at the end. I did hit publish. The book did go live, and I began blasting my own personal and my book social media page with the information. And the book was off to a slow start right after Christmas, very slow. And if you remember from last week, I found an error, an egregious error on page 1, and we fixed it. And we replaced 5 or 6 books because we didn't want people to feel bad about that. It wasn't a huge error, but it was embarrassing and really upsetting to me. We fixed it. We went right back into KDP and fixed it. Went back, printed books, passed them out, and now the book is selling again. That's the way you have to be focused on writing your book if you want to write a good book. I think there's about 4 million books going on Amazon this year. There's about 22 million books on Amazon now. Write your best work, support it, promote it, and really stick with it. That's the key to getting this process done and done well. We're going to come back next week and talk about a few other things. Remember, we've got 3 other modules to talk about. So there are some other things to do now that you have hit print, publish. The book has been done. It's finished. You can sell that book. Now you have more to do. We'll talk about your next stage of homework when we come back next week. Folks, I hope you're enjoying the series. If you don't mind, please hit subscribe. I would love to get every one of you join up, and we'll try to do some sort of creative and hopefully entertaining thing on this YouTube channel over the next few modules. Maybe we'll do another module about a different stage of writing. But thank you again for being here. We look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye. Take care.